You just press play on the Last Breath Huntcast, home of the Huntroversy. We're here to entertain, educate, and engage. And in case you didn't know, you only live once. But if you do it right, once is enough. Don't waste it. All right, everybody, good morning and welcome to episode number 72 of the Last Breath Huntcast. My guest today is going to be Matt, and this is a reminder that every Monday morning you can listen to a brand new episode on iTunes, Libsyn, Spotify, or watch us on YouTube in the evening with the video version. So, this is the fourth of four podcasts that are going to be laid down back to back to back to back, and if you missed one, here was the order in which they were rolled out. On Monday, Logan and Allie covered their buck called Stronghand. On Tuesday, Garrett and I talked about the story on how we arrowed Crunch, the buck he killed in November. Yesterday, which was Wednesday, we went over a controversy about when to manage doe herds, doe populations, early, late, etc. And today, which is December 3rd, we're going to be talking about Matt's buck, Hanson. So this is a reminder, friendly reminder, for Illinoisans to buy your second turkey tag. So second lottery just started today, and if you didn't get in on first lottery, you better get your tag. So, final announcement before we give Matt a call. YouTube, if you guys would do us a favor and go subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got a ton of great content that we put out on a weekly basis. We've been dropping between 3 and 8 episodes or pieces of content on that platform weekly ever since turkey season. And we're constantly updating that and been having a lot of positive feedback lately. So thank you to everybody that's a new listener, that's clicked the subscribe button, and that's helped us out. So our topic tonight, like I said earlier, is going to be how Matt killed a buck he and Jesse have hunted for 3 years, I believe, called Hanson. So without giving any of the story away too much, we're going to go ahead and call him.
Hello.
Hello, beautiful. You ready to rock and roll?
I suppose.
You suppose. Well, you bucked out the other day for, what is this? Is this your fourth year bucking out in 7 years, I believe?
Yeah, probably.
It's
fourth or fifth. I don't remember.
I think it's the fourth or fifth.
They kind of blend together anymore.
I would agree with that. They do kind of blend together. It's hard to put your finger on it, but you killed a buck called Hanson, which you and Jesse had been hunting for. Was it 3 seasons that you've known Hanson?
More or less, yeah. We kind of put a face to the name last year, and then obviously found him again this year and really kind of targeted him as of late last year and obviously this year, now that he was at least a 5-year-old deer.
Sure. So my first question is, what day did you kill Hanson for all the listeners and everybody that's not in the Last Breath Inner Circle that doesn't know? So go ahead and talk about the date first and the weather conditions, if you would.
It was November 16th. It was very, very chilly. Light, had a light variable wind. Sunny.
Big
and,
skies.
Obviously,
big sky, sunny.
Obviously, no rut. So
sure. But kind of towards the tail end of the rut, though, honestly.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, usually I'd say the first 20 days are probably, I guess I would say like the 9th through the 20th are probably, in my opinion, the peak of the rut, and then it kind of tapers off after that.
Sure. So you had talked about...
At least where I'm...
Right. Yeah, so you had talked about how you and Jesse had known Hanson for a couple of years, and
Yep.
You had encountered Hanson a couple of times before you actually stuck the final arrow in him, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and take me back to like the very early stages of November and the first Hanson encounter. Go ahead.
So Hanson was your typical super mature, super bully style 8-pointer. And in this particular property we were hunting, it got to the point where we stopped getting pictures of basically every nice deer that was coming in there for the first part of the month. So kind of came to an abrupt stop, if you will. And the only big deer that we were getting on camera in there was Hanson. And, going through the stages of our season, our cameras kind of went cold everywhere but this past year, as far as mature buck appearances and sightings were to be concerned. So me being off work and really having no regular deer to speak of besides Hanson to hunt is kind of what led me into targeting this deer. And, there's multiple different reasons I targeted him. One, he's a 5+ year old deer. So I like to target deer of that age class. And two, I wanted to be able to alleviate some of the, I guess, pressure on this property and let some of these deer be relaxed enough to start using it again. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, literally within 3 days after I shot Hanson, all of our nice 2, 3, 4, and even this big 6, 7-year-old buck that outscores Hanson by 40 inches have all started using the property again. So, I mean, it's pretty amazing to see when you get a deer like that who's literally just kicking the dog shit out of everything in there. You take a deer out of a property like that and everything just immediately just kind of resets and goes back to normal. So that's why I targeted him. I mean, if you want to go that route.
Sure.
You asked about the first encounter.
Yep.
Jesse and I were hunting. I don't even remember what day it was anymore. It was probably about a week before I shot him. We went in there to hunt of an evening out of the stand I actually killed Hanson out of. And I was only hunting this stand in particular because Hanson was using the south and west side of our property, and we weren't getting him at all on any of our eastern cameras. So I had only one stand that I could possibly hunt him out of, and I hunted him a little unorthodox at times. Hunted him on some really marginal winds, honestly, because the deer was in there every single day at a certain point. So, I was just kind of playing my odds that luck would be on my side and he would happen by me, and which is exactly what happened on the first encounter, which ended a little ridiculous, I guess, if you want to call it. So Hanson was coming in. He was going to stay at about that 65-yard mark, which a lot of people probably wouldn't feel comfortable shooting, but it was super calm. The deer was super calm. I mean, it was about perfect conditions for, to be able to take a long distance shot. So Hanson's coming in. He's staying in the corn. And we're kind of getting to that point where is he going to jump the fence or is he going to stay in the corn? And he's, starting to get through our shooting lane out to the corn. He's right at 65 yards. And I was already full draw on him. I tried to stop him. And then that third stop, he finally put the brakes on. And as I was trying to get resettled back in behind my bow, because I had to pull my head out from behind my bow to really bell her out there to stop him, I touched my damn release off and wung an arrow through the freaking branches, and it plinkoed all over the place. And Hanson ran off with really no care in the world. He didn't even know what the hell had happened. I mean, he was literally on that same trail camera out in that same spot 4 hours later. So it didn't even affect him in any way, shape, or form.
That's crazy. So do you think that that he knew, what it was in terms of like
I don't know.
human pressure, or
It just heard a noise and was like, what the hell was that? I mean, like I said, he literally came from the direction he ran. He literally walked right back in front of the camera. So I shot at him at like 3:18, and he was back in front of the camera by like a little after 6 or 7. I think it was a little after 6 o'clock maybe. So, I mean, it really wasn't that long at all, and he was right back in there. I mean, so he probably never even left the property, to be honest.
That's pretty crazy too, given the fact that lots of people believe when you shoot at a deer, that could be your last straw, which that certainly wasn't the case with Hanson. If there's anything to be learned from that, I mean, that's pretty incredible in and of itself that he was on camera within, a few days, just because lots of people that I've talked to before that have wung an arrow at a deer or hit a deer or something like that, they may not ever see that deer again. which is pretty interesting that Hanson came back, and not just came back, but came back so quickly. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So that kind of rounds you out into my next question was, how were you feeling that night? I mean, obviously it didn't go the way that you were planning, but at that time you had already killed Chubb, so you already had a deer on the ground. Jesse had killed Raphael, so each of you had shot a buck at that time. So on a scale from, 0 being relatively unaffected to 10 being pretty crushed, like pretty deflated, how were you feeling after that first encounter with Hanson ended the way that it did?
Probably a 1. I was laughing about it shortly after because it was such a fluke deal. Like I couldn't even believe what the hell had happened. Like it was just so stupid how it all went down. And like, it was just such a crazy deal that I barely touched the trigger on my release trying to get settled back in. I mean, the arrow was freaking a mile away from Hanson, more or less. So it didn't even really bother me because I knew that, he didn't blow. He didn't even really run with his tail off till after he got a couple 100 yards away. So I knew he didn't even know what the hell had happened. He'd been in there so freaking much, it's just only a matter of time before he really came back. And then, literally, I think it was 3 days later is when I encountered him the second time, which that one stung a little bit worse than the first one. So it was another super cold, frosty morning. I hadn't seen any deer. It was actually the morning you shot your second buck.
So that would have been the 13th then.
Yeah, it would have been the
Friday
13th.
the 13th. Yep, it was really cold that morning.
You guys had just called me saying you arrowed a buck. And then about 20 minutes later, it was getting to be like 7:30, 7:45 in the morning, and I hadn't seen a damn deer yet. So I'm like, you know what? It's pretty quiet. It's calm. I'll do a rattling sequence. Well, excuse me. I go to pick my horns up, and I'd been looking around for several minutes leading up to this light rattling sequence I was going to do. And just to make sure, because it was going to be a blind rattling sequence, which is typically what I do anyway, but I hadn't seen anything, hadn't heard anything, and I literally no more than touched the horns together, and I hear deer running in my direction. So I'm standing up in the cameraman stand, which is a stand I can't really see very well to the west out of. And I look out there best I could, and I saw 3 deer running at me. Well, 2 of which were does, one of which was Hanson, and I'm sitting here more or less with my pants down, antlers in my hand, camera was turned on, didn't have anything I could possibly do. So I literally squatted down as fast as I could, set the antlers down, made a bunch of noise doing that, and the doe picks me in the tree. Well, she picks me and takes off running. And then as I'm standing back up, he comes and steps just a couple feet out of the shooting lane, and he looks right up at me at like 37 yards, and he's staring at me in the tree, and there's not a damn thing I can do about it. And then I moved as slow as I could over to grab my bow. I swung my bow around as slow as I could, tried to get the camera resituated, and then he just took off running after the doe because she finally busted out of there. So Hanson literally ran within 35 yards of me in 2 shooting lanes, and I was handcuffed and couldn't do anything about it.
So the second time you were more frustrated than the first time.
Oh, yeah, I was pissed. I was mad, to say the least. I had the deer I was targeting for the second time, and in less than a week, he went through both of my shooting lanes within 40 yards, and there wasn't anything I could possibly do about it. The only thing I wish I would have done differently is just not tried to rattle, because he would have been toast on the 13th instead of the 16th.
Sure.
He would have walked right through on his own.
Yeah, I guess hindsight's always 20/20 when it comes to that stuff, and you didn't know that he was going to be that close to you when you ripped your rattling sequence. But
and you've been there now since you've been there at the property with me, and if you're up in the stand, you really, with all those little small locust trees and stuff, you really just can't see very well to the west and anywhere really. There's just too many branches. And I've actually cut a bunch of those trees down since then to improve visibility, which has actually helped significantly.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a ton of those trees, and it's hard to see really in both directions. I mean, you can see out in front of you really well, but I mean, out to your immediate right and out to your immediate left, down and up the creek. It's hard to see just because, like you said, it's not necessarily that there's trees in the way, but it's just the density of those trees. There's a lot of little trees. You know, we're talking about like multiple stems per square foot kind of thing, like super thick little juvenile locust trees that really,
you're talking a bunch of 6 to 8 inch trees, and they're just all stacked in like a 40-yard by 40-yard square, and there's probably 30 or 40 of them in there.
Yep, exactly.
And it's just super tough to see.
So
but it's a lot easier to see now that I've kind of cut that in half.
Sure. So now that you've made that adjustment, you take us to the third encounter, which is the day you actually got him. Yeah, I'm here. Are you there? Are you there?
Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Are you still there, buddy?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Well, that brings us into like the third encounter that you had with Hanson. So,
which is the final.
Yep, that's the final encounter. So go ahead and take us to the date, which we've already said 16th. And what was the
16th.
Yeah, and what was the time?
I first encountered him shortly after 7 o'clock, just as the sun had fully came up over the horizon. I noticed him way, way out in the middle of the cornfield in the wide open. I noticed the big-bodied deers. The sun was hitting the deer just right, and it was just shining and glistening out there. And I put the binos on him and realized that it was him, clear out in the middle of the wide open field, locked down with a doe.
Yep, and you were Snapchatting that to me, Jesse, and Garrett all morning, and we were all working that day. And I was just thinking to myself, "Oh my God, he's gonna do it. He's gonna kill him," because you sat there and watched that deer for a long time.
It was over 2 hours. I watched the deer stay locked down with a doe out in the field and literally just chase off these 2 or 3 little young bucks that kept trying to get in on his slam piece.
Yeah, and then he
was getting irritated. We'll just say that. And I mean, it was an outstanding morning. Honestly, I ended up seeing, I think, 28 deer that morning, and it was just probably one of the better mornings I'd actually had rut hunting in quite a while. I mean, the deer were all over the freaking place, man. They were like ants.
Sure. And so what finally made him budge from his position out there in the field to kind of work towards you?
So they had been bedded down out in the field for the better part of an hour, and I'd just been sitting there, just relaxed. And I had a couple deer kind of move through within bow range, honestly, while I'd been sitting there just staring down that field. I literally was just not taking my eyes off of him out in that field, because if he moved, I wanted to know what he was doing, where he was going. And I already had my dad on speed dial in case the doe, which he had already kind of deterred him from going south once, because early in the morning she was trying to push south a little bit. And so I called my dad, and he jumped up out of bed and went and parked down on the south road. And then that kind of turned her back into the middle of the property, back into the middle of the cornfield. And then she ended up bedding down. And he just kind of oversaw her for the next 45 minutes or so. And my dad kind of just tooled around the mile a little bit. And basically we just kind of did a more or less a little bit of a deer drive, if you will, because he just literally just parked up there just to give him a little bit of pressure to prevent him from wanting to go south. And so what they ended up doing is they came back into the middle of the cornfield, which is about a 35-acre cornfield, and they were about 250 yards from me. They bedded down for the better part of a couple hours, and throughout this couple-hour time frame, I think 6 different little bucks came out there and tried to pester the doe and him, and he ran every single one of them off. Well, it got to a certain point where there were now 3 bucks bedded out there, including Hanson. So Hanson and 2 younger bucks and this doe were all bedded out there, locked down with this doe. And she got up and she started kind of feeding a little bit. And then these little bucks just kept trying to literally just edge in there and get in between him and her. And she finally got to the point where she had had enough and literally made a break right for the freaking tree I was sitting in. So from the time she took off running on a dead run towards my tree, the time I turned the camera on, and to the time I released an arrow was all within a minute. So I think you saw, I was 47 seconds in to the clip of recording by the time I released an arrow at this deer. So,
Yep.
I mean, it happened fast.
Yeah, it did. She came loping in there. So basic recap, the deer eventually got annoyed, and by the deer I mean the doe. The doe is the key to this whole story, in my opinion. Just her being uneasy out in that field and being pestered by those like subordinate littler bucks finally put the pressure on her, put the heat on her to make a jog over towards you. And so you got your camera.
Trying to find cover to get away from them.
Yeah, so you got your camera on, record, and then it all happens. She jumps over the fence. And then what happened? Take me through the shot.
So she jumps over the fence and literally runs right to the creek where I was sitting, and then she turns and heads to her left, which would be heading west, as soon as she got to the edge of the creek bank. So she went in right where I cut all those trees down and headed right for the cover. And what's he do? He comes, kind of looks at the fence for a second, literally jumps the fence and runs straight in. I mean, this is, a lot of people are going to knock me for this, but I took another frontal shot at the deer because I'm self-filming and I have literally a split-second opportunity to kill him. Because if he would have got turned and headed in her direction, it would have been all over because I didn't have a shot. So I stopped him at 20 yards frontal, and he was literally 2 more steps and he'd have been out of frame anyway.
Sure.
And I was settled in. I took a second, and I touched it off and hit him literally right above where the curly hair tuft is on their chest, and then right in where, if you're looking at the anatomy of a deer, you see their neck muscles, they come down to a point right above that tuft of hair, and I hit him right in the neck muscle, frontal, trying to bury it right in his chest cavity. When we eventually figured out that I jugular vein shot this deer, and that's why he literally bled buckets from the time where he was shot to the time he died, or at least bedded down, was within 2 minutes.
Yep. And it was a quick death. I will say that. I mean, you have your footage of him, and he's just dumping cups of blood out, and he bedded down and died, I would say 120 yards tops, like maximum.
Yeah.
From your stand.
As far as the crow flies, from shot to bed down, 120 yards, and he was literally on his feet from the time I shot him to the time he bedded down. It was within 2 minutes, and he was laying down.
Yep. So, like you said, I feel like you're going to catch a little bit of flack for this one just because a frontal shot's not a typical shot you put on a whitetail, but this is the second deer that you have killed very quickly with a frontal shot. I listened to some podcasts with Corey Jacobson, and I know this is a different animal, a different species, a different kind of scenario and everything, but he's an elk hunter, big, huge, like National Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation calling champion, and he's talked before about hitting what's called the thoracic opening. So on ungulates, which are the family that a white-tailed deer is in, so white-tailed deer, mule deer, black-tailed deer, sitka deer, coos deer, and elk are all in this family called ungulates, and this thoracic opening is basically where the neck meets the body cavity. And for most elk hunters, they're calling an elk into their position. So lots of times the elk is frontal when they come into their setup, when they come in to, get a shot opportunity. And so he's a big believer in it, but he shoots a fixed blade broadhead, and usually he's eye level with him on the ground. But this was your second frontal shot that you've put on a whitetail before, and like I said, it's a really deadly, really, really lethal shot. It's just, I feel like lots of people don't see it, and I feel like it's important to mention that you didn't whip an arrow at like 60 and he was frontal. I mean, this is a 20-yard shot. This deer was 20 yards. Like very hard quartering too. I wish he would have been more frontal, and I wish if I would have hit 3 inches to the left, I would have liked my shot a lot better. Just on the other side of the esophagus. Sure.
If I would have hit 3 inches to the left, I would have liked my shot a lot better. But the bottom of the line is the deer still died within 2 minutes.
Yeah, which is just the same length of time as a heart shot or lung shot.
I shoot my Matthews VXR. I'm shooting 75 pounds, and I had a 2-inch NAP kill zone on the end of my Maxima Blue. So I mean, I'm not shooting garbage equipment either. I'm shooting a 2-inch expandable that when it cuts deep, and it leaves a hell of a hole.
And you've got a lot of kinetic energy behind it, pulling back 75 pounds too.
Yeah. got a little bit of oomph behind it too. So I knew I had the right amount of gear, or I guess the right equipment to do the job.
Sure.
And if I'd have been shooting the other broadhead but the kill zone, I probably wouldn't have been doing it.
Sure. Yeah, the kill zone's a deadly broadhead. It's killed a lot of bucks for us over the years, especially for you. And
Yep.
I feel like that brings into the next question, which is like, we've talked about this a little bit before, you and I, and it's opportunities, right? So
Sure.
those opportunities, and I feel like lots of people, especially, you know, on YouTube, or especially when any time a video is involved, really, a lot of people get real defensive about you know, any shot that's not perfect realistically. Like if you rear lungs shoot a deer and throw the video up somewhere, lots of people are going to say, well, that was really far back. And I mean, anything that, it seems to me, any video that
There's
at
always
least we put
Word
up.
warrior out there.
Yeah. And so this would be your second deer you've shot frontal. And talk to me about the difference between an opportunity and an encounter, because I feel like you turn lots of encounters into opportunities. Like I said, I've said this before, I think confidence kills deer, and I think that one of the things that makes you the most deadly, if not the deadliest bow hunter that I know personally, other than maybe like Clark Cummings, is the fact that you take advantage of all those opportunities. You take advantage of every single time you get an opportunity. You're not afraid to draw your bow back. You're not afraid to take your shot. And talk me through your mindset on that. So was there a point in time, like when that deer was coming in frontal, I mean, did you know that he was going to stop frontal, or were you hoping that he was going to turn and give you that broadside shot that everybody likes taking?
Honestly,
and
I
follow
was
the doe?
kind of hoping he would. I was hoping he would have opened up to me a little bit, but he didn't. And when the moment of truth is really there for me, like I just go straight to kill mode. Like I couldn't even really walk you through what's going on in my brain, but like any given circumstance, I'm already premeditated on what I need to do and where I need to put my arrow. Like I said, I wish I would have been 3 inches further to the left, but it literally happened so fast in the amount of time that I had. I was settled in. I was rock solid. And like I said, that was my mistake, just hitting 3 inches too far to the right, but I knew right where I needed it, at least the pretty close to the exact area I needed to put the arrow to kill the deer. I just, like I said, I wish I had been on the other side of his neck, and it would have probably been even faster of a death for him. But my brain's constantly like working, like, okay, if he does this, what do I need to do? Like, and it's crazy to think that in 47 seconds, your mind can literally go 1,000 different directions in 1,000 different scenarios, and you still be able to take advantage of the situation. But it's just the way it happens, I guess.
Sure. So you get all this on film and you bring it back to your house. We review it when I go down there to help you track it. And the blood trail was one of those strangest blood trails. Not strange, it was incredible, but a strange blood trail in retrospect, right? So when you heart shoot a bow deer or lung shoot a bow deer, you got the stereotypical spray or the quote-unquote red carpet treatment. But this one was different. This was about like every time this deer bounded, like we called it when we were tracking him, it's like he spilled like a half a water bottle of blood, just like a big circle, like a 1 foot diameter circle where it's just red. And if you're listening to the video, and if you're listening to this or watching the video podcast version of this, you'll be able to see what we're talking about, because I'm going to add that footage over this. So if you want to check that out, by all means do. And we keep going down this blood trail, and we're going really slow to just make sure that if the deer is still in the same position, that you'll be able to put a follow-up shot on him. But that was not necessary at all, because where you videotaped him go down on film was right where he laid. And
I mean,
was dead.
If you guys are watching, like this is a blood trail that we were able to see 40 yards ahead of us. I mean, it wasn't like we were, 8-10 yards at a time we were having a big glob of shit for blood. It was every 5-6 feet, and you could see it, a good long ways ahead of us. So it wasn't like we were really trying very hard to follow it.
Yeah, it was massive traumatic blood loss. So we tracked him about 100. I don't even know if it was 100 yards really, man, but it was not very far. And right where he went down, he laid and he was stiffer than a board, which has got to tell me because I was there about 3.5 hours after you had shot him. And if he's stiff when we found him, I got to believe that right once you saw him go down there, he was dead within seconds of that time. So, what is that? So that's got to make you feel better.
By backing out, I wasn't sure.
Sure.
And I knew that I had got down earlier in the morning before I'd even left, like an hour before I'd even left, and checked out the blood in the immediate area because I had watched the footage a few times, and within the first 10 yards, he had lost a massive amount of blood. And I sent everybody a Snapchat, of the blood. And then I sat there for about another hour just glassing the area. And then I just decided it was time to go ahead and pack my stuff out. And that's after I had talked to you. I knew you were coming down. So I just, I figured I wasn't entirely sure anyway, so I might as well give him a few more hours and wait for some help. So that's exactly what I did. And, little did I know, I didn't even really need to give him that kind of time, but I did anyway.
Sure. Which is always the better play, I feel like, So kind of switching gears on you a little bit here. Lesson to be learned here. This is what I was thinking the whole time when you told me you'd killed this deer. And I feel like lots of people as whitetail hunters, especially the more, videos that are informational coming out, the more podcast informational that are coming out, the more literature that's being published on whitetails. I feel like lots of hunters in today's day and age, especially with all these resources at our fingertips, could tend to oversimplify deer hunting, if you will. And I think that one of the best things about you and what makes you such a great hunter is because I feel like you just simplify it. Like you talked about earlier with Hanson, you went in there a couple times on a marginal wind, but at the end of the day, though, you knew, hey, this deer is in here, and he's in here all the time. To kill this deer, I just have to go in there, and eventually he's going to come by and give me my opportunity. So do you feel like that is kind of true a little bit with all the videos, podcasts, information that's kind of accessible to hunters? Do you think hunters tend to, in at least today's day and age with all this stuff available, tend to oversimplify or overcomplexify really deer hunting a little bit?
I feel like that's definitely true. I mean, for the most part, I try not to put a lot of thought into it, but just enough thought to, I guess, coerce myself into making a decision. I mean, I literally hunted that deer on the absolute wrong wind several times just due to the amount of time he was spending there. I mean, the deer was literally living in there, and there's only, a few people are familiar with the area, but there's literally only 3 bedding areas on the whole farm, and they're all on the same side of the creek, and 2 of which are within 200 yards of this stand that he was always in front of. I mean, whether it be dark or daylight or not. I mean, so there's literally only a couple areas that he could have been bedded down in. And as much as he's in there morning, night, afternoon, he's literally by this camera and stand, if not once, twice, sometimes 3 times a day. So, I mean, at a certain point, you got to literally I got to the point where I'm like, you know what? He's in here. I don't really give a damn what the wind is. I mean, I'll practice my scent control like I usually do. And if a deer's going to win me, they're going to win me anyway, regardless of where they're at. So I just literally just buried myself in that tree, waiting on the chance for him to walk by. And he literally walked by it. 2 of the 3 days that I hunted him were the wrong wind, and he walked by it anyway. So, I mean, Sure. It's just the deer was so comfortable in there. Why not continue to try him, until if it would have got to a point where he wouldn't show up. Because, I mean, I was checking the cameras like every couple of days, like every 2 days I was checking the cameras just to make sure he was still in there. And, he was just so comfortable. Why not? I mean, if it would have got to a point, like I was trying to say, he would have maybe disappeared for 3 or 4 days, and I had hunted him on a wrong wind, then I would have changed my tactics a little bit. But even hunting him on the wrong wind, he was still all over the place in there. So the damage was minimal, if any, to what I was doing.
Sure. So you just basically said, and at that point too, once you're getting to the point in the rut that we are talking about here, meaning like the 10th and on, really, I mean, it's, at least in my opinion, it's basically time to go for broke, the 10th through the rest of the way. Like, go into your best stand. Lots of people, I feel like, will hang up deer stands for wind X, wind Y, wind Z, etc. And they're afraid to hunt them just because they're waiting for the wind to be perfect. But if Garrett and I have talked about this quite a lot over the last few years, and we seem to always have our best luck on a day when we give the deer a bit of the wind, meaning the wind is not exactly perfect for us, but it is not exactly perfect for the deer either. And I feel like during that late phase of the rut, like we're talking about, when the peak rut is coming, which is not the greatest time to hunt, I do not think, just because more does are readily available, and it's not that crazy madness buck seeking phase anymore. There's lots of more does coming into heat. There's lots more bucks locked down, and I feel like lots of people in that 10th, 11th, 12th time frame and on are really just going for broke, going into their best stands before their state's gun season. I know for us opens up. You might as well go sit one of those stands, and you might as well take a gamble because gun season's coming, and lots of deer are going to get flattened on gun season opener. So, why not? Why not roll the dice, and why not have a little bit to lose if it yields you an opportunity, which it obviously did for you. So,
multiple. I'm a lot more unorthodox than most, but it works for me, so I'm not going to change it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you kill a dozen Pope and Young bucks in, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, that's enough. That's enough proof in my book to buy into what you're doing. So, that kind of rounds us out the story. I got some would you rathers though here for you. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay.
Fire away.
Would you rather shoot 2 140 to 150 class bucks or 160 class buck? But the 160 is right at 160. It's not like a 169 or something.
I'd rather shoot the one bigger deer.
Okay. During late season, would you rather forget one glove or one base layer?
Base layer. My hands get cold. I'm toast.
Okay, how about number 3? Would you rather eat tag soup or shoot a half-racked 3-year-old buck?
I'm not going to go hungry, I guess, eating the tag soup.
That's fair. This is an interesting question. So somebody emailed our website on this, which if you guys ever have any questions for us, reach out to us on any social media, really, or you can email our website at www.lastbreathmedia.com. But this is a listener question, and they said, IDK who this Matt dude is, but he is on them. This guy cracks me up, and I love watching him on YouTube. Freshly subscribed. I gotta know, what is the biggest deer that Matt has ever shot? Thanks. So go ahead, tell him.
I've got 195 and 5/8 inch whitetail, 22 scoreable points on the wall.
There you go. So now that guy knows. So thanks for those questions. We do appreciate getting those. And before you get off the phone here with me, Matt, gun season, second season is coming, and you are obviously bucked out. But do you have any tips for everybody hitting the field tomorrow, which is really today, when this podcast is published, on Thursday, at least for those of us hunting still in Illinois? Any tips or tricks for the late season, because it is definitely getting further and further by the day away from November, that rut time, and more shifting towards the late season pattern. So any tips from the master?
I'm not so much a master, just I'm really lucky, but there are still a few does that haven't been bred yet, so I wouldn't count out any rutting behavior. I'm still seeing it on the mobile cams as of this morning. A few bucks kind of seeking, nose on the ground, looking around. And the one deer's actually that we got pictures of last night. He was in the sanctuary twice, coming out of it twice, nose on the ground. So I wouldn't count out any rutting behavior. If you have a buck that's out by himself, it wouldn't hurt to call to him, as long as, you've got all the elements in your favor. Definitely need to be on the food, though. Where the does are going to be, the bucks are still going to follow at this time of year. Now, as we get closer, 2 weeks from now, that's going to obviously change. They're going to be more geared towards their bellies, but there are still, in my opinion, a few does that have not been bred. So if you get lucky enough to be where the does are, you might just get your chance.
All right, well said. And when you get that chance, you better take it. So big shout out to you on bucking out yet again. thanks for hopping on here with me, buddy, and good luck to you and Jesse hitting the field this weekend. Hopefully you guys can buck him out. If not, I'll be talking to you tomorrow on your way home from work, brother. So thanks for spending the time.
Buddy. Good luck to you guys. Good luck to everybody else.
All right, we'll let you know in the morning if we kill one. See you, buddy.
All right, buddy. See ya.
Bye. Okay, so that was the Master of Disaster, old dad, a.k.a. Matt Bartlett. And just a big shout out to him again. It's we've been real close friends for about 8 years now, and he just never ceases to amaze me with the stuff he's able to pull off. And that kind of rounds out that episode. But since the episode is kind of finishing up here, a couple more business-related items. We've got some good discount codes with a bunch of companies that we work with. Those are in the Last Breath Inner Circle, so that's our Facebook group that we have. Our Public Land series, if you guys enjoy watching public land hunting, public land deer hunting, we just laid down a 5-episode series with our buddies from the Whitetail Legacy podcast, and that is on our YouTube channel at Last Breath TV. Tonight, this Thursday, we're releasing an awesome Throwback Thursday episode. I'm not going to spoil it, but is maybe one of our bigger deer that we've ever killed with a gun, right in time for second gun season weekend. And Last Breath Live. Every Wednesday all year long, we're going to be rolling out a new video showing you what we've been doing that week. So it's just a simple edit. It's nothing fancy, but it's just what we've been doing on a week-to-week basis in order to keep you guys looped in with what we've been doing. So if you guys want to check those out, those are available on our YouTube channel every Wednesday. And we want to thank you guys so much again for listening to the Last Breath Huntcast. We appreciate all the new listeners, all the new subscribers on YouTube that we've been getting lately, and we can't thank you guys enough. So hopefully you've watched, listened, and you guys can see all these stories come to life on a big screen in late July this year at our launch party. And if you're not familiar with the launch party is, no worries. We'll be laying down a podcast in the coming month or two to detail for everybody that's new and hasn't been to one before what a launch party is. So little spoiler alert, there's free beer, there's a lot of free gear, and 2 years ago we started our own deer show. So there will be about 20 deer heads at our deer show this year, and there's a couple spots left with Wayne Tompkins at Tompkins Taxidermy. So if you guys shoot a deer and you call up Wayne, again, Wayne Tompkins in Muscatine, Iowa, and you'd like to get that deer mounted, you can get it mounted for $50 off and pick it up in July at our launch party. So not only are you getting blue ribbon quality, award-winning quality taxidermy, you're also getting your mount in 6 months and $50 off. So you can get a $500 shoulder-mounted head from Wayne, and you can pick it up at our launch party when we roll all these films out for the first time. So again, thank you very much for listening to Last Breath Huntcast. Don't waste it.